The scrub brush wore grooves into Isadora Ashford's palms years ago. 23 winters of cold stone floors of knees pressed against marble until they ached of hands working, while her mind fled to places where daughters were loved instead of tolerated, where being born was not a crime that required daily penance. She didn't know that tonight everything would change, that a king was coming, that she would never scrub another floor. The morning sun cut through the east windows of Ashford Manor in sharp diagonal lines. Gold light, cold light, the kind that showed every streak, every imperfection. Isadora worked the brush and practiced circles, methodical, unseen. Around her, the manor woke with the sounds of wealth preparing to display itself. Footsteps overhead, doors closing, the distant ring of silver against china as servants set breakfast tables for people who mattered. She was not one of those people. Her knees shifted against the stone. The bucket of soapy water beside her had gone gray an hour ago, cloudy with the evidence of her work. Her hands moved on instinct. Scrub, rinse, repeat. The rhythm was meditation. The rhythm was survival. If she focused on the motion, she didn't have to think about the 23 years that had brought her here. Didn't have to remember being 5 years old tugging at her father's coat sleeve, asking why he wouldn't look at her. Didn't have to hear his voice, cold as winter stone. You remind me of my mistake. A mistake. That's what a daughter was when her mother died, bringing her into the world. When her mother had been nobody important. When her mother's blood ran human instead of wolf. Isadora pressed the brush harder against the floor. Small acts of violence against stone that could not feel pain. Stone that could not reject her. Stone that stayed exactly where it was supposed to be. You'll wear through to the foundation if you keep at it like that. The voice was soft, worn smooth by 6 decades of living. Isadora looked up. Grace Holloway stood in the doorway, her gray hair pinned back in the same simple style she'd worn every day for 40 years. Head housekeeper, the only person in this house who had ever spoken to Isadora like she was human. The stone can take it, Isadora said. Her voice came out rougher than intended. She cleared her throat. Lady Rosalind wants everything perfect for tonight. Lady Rosalind wants the world to bow before her. Grace crossed the hall, her steps careful the way older bodies moved when joints had begun their slow rebellion against time. She lowered herself to sit on the third stair, breathing a little harder than she used to. But the world rarely cooperates. Isadora sat back on her heels. Her lower back protested. 23 years old and her body already cataloged the costs of this life. She dipped the brush back into the water. The bristles came up dripping. Why the urgency? Grace asked. The midsummer ball isn't until tonight. Exactly. Isadora returned to her circles. Everything must be flawless. No evidence that real people live here. No proof that the Ashford family is anything less than perfect. Grace was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried weight. The kind of weight that came from choosing words carefully, from knowing they would matter. I saw the guest list this morning. Northern lords, southern merchants, half the nobility this side of the Frost Mountains. Good for them. Lady Celestine has a new dress. Crimson silk. Cost more than most families see in a year. Isadora's hands stilled. She knew where this was going. Could feel it settling into her bones like coal before a storm. She'll look beautiful. She always does. Grace paused. Your father requested your presence this morning, in his study. The brush slipped from Isadora's hand. It clattered against the stone handle, spinning in a lazy circle before settling. She stared at it. Her father had not spoken to her directly in 10 years. Not since the day after her 13th birthday when she'd asked him, voice small and desperate, if he might ever love her. He'd looked at her, then really looked at her, and she'd seen his face close like a door. Not love. Recognition of a burden he carried. An obligation he resented. He'd said nothing, turned back to his papers. And Isadora had understood silence was his answer. Silence would always be his answer. When her voice came out steady, she was proud of that. An hour ago, Isadora picked up the brush, dipped it, resumed her circles. Then I'm late. He'll have to manage his disappointment. Dora. Grace never called her that in bloodlines. Never where others could hear the affection, the familiarity that might suggest Isadora deserved kindness. You should go. I'm busy. The floor will still be here when you return. So will my father's indifference. Grace stood her knees audibly protesting. She crossed to Isadora and placed one weathered hand on her shoulder. The touch was brief, warm. Everything Isadora's father had never been. Sometimes the hardest thing is to see yourself the way others see you. You think you're nobody. You think you don't matter, but child, you're wrong. Isadora looked up. Grace's face was lined with age, softened by compassion. 60 years of life had taught her things Isadora was still learning. How to survive. How to find grace in graceless places. How to believe you deserved better even when the world insisted otherwise. I'm a mistake, Isadora said quietly. He told me that when I was 5. Why would his opinion change now? I don't know, but you should find out. The bucket of dirty water caught the morning light, turning it murky gold. Isadora looked at her reflection in it. Distorted. Incomplete. A girl made of shadows and doubt. She set down the brush. Stood. Her knees ached. Her back ached. Everything ached except the part of her that had learned long ago not to hope. If this is another humiliation, she said, another way to remind me of my place, then you'll survive it. Grace's smile was sad knowing. You always do. Lord Edmund Ashford's study smelled of tobacco, and old leather, of money, and decisions made in rooms where women were not welcome. Isadora stood in the doorway waiting. She had not been invited to enter. Had not been invited to exist really, but here she was anyway. Stubborn, unwanted, alive despite everything. Her father sat behind his mahogany desk, back to the door, staring out the window at gardens he paid others to maintain. His hair had gone gray at the temples. His shoulders carried the weight of wealth, the way some men carried guilt, heavy, inconstant, and quietly crushing. He did not turn when she cleared her throat. You summoned me, Isadora said. Even her voice felt like an intrusion into this space. The midsummer ball is tonight. His voice was flat, emotionless, the voice he used for discussing livestock prices or weather patterns. You will attend. The words hung in the air like smoke. Isadora waited for the rest, for the explanation, for any indication that this was not some elaborate cruelty. None came. I don't understand, she said finally. You don't need to understand. You need to obey. I haven't attended a social function in this house since I was 9 years old. Since Celestine's birthday party, when she announced to everyone that I was an embarrassment to the family. Celestine was a child. She was 13, old enough to know cruelty. Edmund turned then. His face was the same face she saw in mirrors sometimes when light hit certain ways. The same sharp nose, the same distant eyes. Biology was a cruel thing binding you to people who wished you didn't exist. Lady Rosalind believes your presence would be appropriate. He said the word like it tasted bad. A show of family unity. The nobility expects to see all Ashford daughters. I'm not a daughter. I'm a secret you haven't figured out how to bury. His jaw tightened, not anger. Worse than anger. Resignation, as if she'd confirmed what he'd always known about her, that she was difficult, ungrateful, a problem that refused to solve itself. You will attend, he said. You will be presentable. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not embarrass this family more than your existence already does. Am I understood? Isadora felt the words land like stones, one after another, building walls she'd spent 23 years learning to navigate. Perfectly. Grace will help you prepare. Your mother had dresses. He stopped, corrected himself. His jaw worked. Lady Rosalind will provide something appropriate. How generous. Isadora. Her name in his mouth sounded like an accusation. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. You will attend because I am telling you to attend. For once in your life, do as you're told without making it a tragedy. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw his words back at him to make him see what he'd done to her, what 23 years of coldness and rejection had carved out of her soul. But she'd learned long ago that fathers like Edmund Ashford did not change, did not soften, did not suddenly recognize the humanity of daughters they'd never wanted. May I be excused? He waved a hand, dismissive, already returning to his papers, to the work that mattered more than she ever would. Isadora left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. She stood in the hallway, breathing carefully, keeping the fractures inside from spreading. From the drawing room down the hall, she heard Celestine's laugh. Bright and musical, the sound of someone who had never doubted her place in the world. Grace found her there, standing motionless in the corridor. I heard. Of course you did. Come with me, child. We have work to do. Grace's room was small, tucked away in the servants' wing, where people who worked for their survival made homes in spaces rich people never saw. Simple furniture, clean linens, a window that looked out over the kitchen gardens where herbs grew in neat, careful rows. Grace pulled an old trunk from beneath her bed. The hinges protested rust and age, making themselves known. Inside, carefully folded in tissue paper yellowed by time, lay a dress. Dove gray silk, simple lines. No embellishment except for a thin ribbon at the waist, darker gray, almost charcoal. The kind of dress that didn't demand attention, but earned it anyway through elegance, through the way good fabric moved with the body wearing it. This was mine, Grace said softly, 40 years ago when I was young and foolish enough to believe I might be something other than what I was born to be. She touched the fabric with careful fingers. I wore it once to a ball not so different from tonight. I danced, I laughed. I pretended for a few hours that I was somebody. Isadora stared at the dress. I can't take this. You can, you will. Grace lifted it from the trunk, held it up. It will fit you. We're built the same. Tall, too thin, because we forget to eat when life gets heavy. Grace, listen to me. The old woman's voice carried steel beneath the softness. Your father commands you to attend this ball because he wants you to be a decoration, a prop, proof that the Ashford family is magnanimous enough to include even their embarrassment. He wants you to fade into the background, to remain what you've always been. I don't know how to be anything else. No. Grace pressed the dress into Isadora's hands. You've been overlooked. There's a difference. Tonight you will simply exist, not because you demand it, not because you perform for their approval, but because you'll walk into that ballroom and remember something very important. What? That you exist, that you deserve to exist. That your mother, Grace's voice caught. She cleared her throat. That your mother would be proud of the woman you've become, even if your father is too broken to see it. Isadora clutched the dress. The silk was cool against her palms, smooth and real. What if I'm not who you think I am? What if I'm just nothing? Grace cupped Isadora's face in both hands. Her skin was warm, lined with age and care. Then you'll be nothing in a beautiful dress. But Dora, I've known you since you were 3 years old. I've watched you survive things that would have destroyed other people. I've seen your kindness when kindness was never shown to you. You are not nothing. You've never been nothing. Tonight the world gets to learn what I've always known. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And tomorrow you keep reminding them. The ballroom of Ashford Manor was designed to impress. 30-foot ceilings dripping with crystal chandeliers. Marble floors polished to mirror brightness. Gold leaf catching candlelight from every surface. Windows that stretched floor to ceiling, looking out over gardens where roses climbed ancient stone walls and fountains sang water into basins carved from marble. Isadora stood at the entrance paralyzed by sensation. The heat of too many bodies in one space. The overwhelming perfume of nobility, expensive and cloying. The rustle of silk against silk, the murmur of conversation designed to exclude the laughter that came easy when life was soft. She wore Grace's dove gray dress. It fit perfectly, moving with her body like it had been made for her. Her hair, usually tied back in a practical braid, hung loose around her shoulders. Dark waves catching light. Her only jewelry was the locket she always wore hidden beneath her dress. Inside, a lock of hair, her mother's. The only proof she'd ever existed. Celestine saw her first. Isadora watched recognition flicker across her sister's face. Then calculation. Then the mask sliding into place. Her sister moved through the crowd with practiced grace, crimson silk billowing. She was beautiful in the way certain people were beautiful, polished, perfect, every hair in place, every gesture calculated. Men watched her pass, women envied her. Celestine knew her power and wielded it like a blade. She stopped in front of Isadora. Her smile was sharp, intimate, the kind only siblings could perfect the ability to destroy with affection. Well, Celestine's voice was pitched for the nobles nearby, loud enough to carry. Look at you, my poor sister, dragged out of the shadows for once. Isadora kept her spine straight, felt Grace's dress around her like armor. Celestine, you should have stayed in the kitchens where you belong. The words were honey-sweet, delivered with a smile that others might mistake for sisterly concern. At least there you could pretend to be useful. A nobleman nearby chuckled. Others turned to watch. Isadora felt the weight of their attention like stones piling on her chest. This was entertainment. Her humiliation was tonight's amusement. Mother requested my presence, Isadora said quietly. Mother requested a spectacle. Celestine smoothed her crimson gown rubies at her throat, catching firelight. Everything about her screamed wealth, from the careful curls to the delicate gold filigree on her slippers. Something for the guests to pity. The forgotten Ashford daughter in her servants' cast-offs pretending she belongs among her betters. The dress, of course Celestine recognized it, had probably seen Grace wear it decades ago, filed away the information for a moment exactly like this. The dress is borrowed, Isadora said, but it's clean, it fits. And it's more honest than most things in this room. Celestine's expression hardened. Honest? I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't perform for approval. I simply exist. That seems to offend you. Nearby heads turned. Conversation paused. Celestine's mask cracked just for a heartbeat, and Isadora saw the person beneath. Not rage, something closer to fear. You're 23 years old and completely unmarked, Celestine said, voice rising just enough for the cluster of young nobles to hear clearly. Do you know what that means? No mate, no bond, no wolf will claim you, you're nothing. Isadora knew, every wolf in the realm knew. To reach her age without finding a match meant one of two things: fate deemed her unworthy, or she was so fundamentally broken that no soul could connect with hers. It means I'm free, Isadora heard herself say. The words came out steadier than she felt. No mate to answer to, no bond to chain me. Some might call that a gift. Well, Celestine laughed. The sound was bright, brittle, designed to carry. Keep telling yourself that, little sister. But we both know the truth. She leaned in, perfume cloying and suffocating. Her lips brushed Isadora's ear. You're nothing. You have nothing. When father finally tires of housing his embarrassment, you'll have nowhere to go. No one will mourn your absence, Mom. She swept away in a rustle of silk and satisfaction. The nobles followed her with their eyes drawn to her light, to her certainty. Isadora stood alone beside a marble pillar that had witnessed these cruelties for 100 years. The music swelled. Couples took to the floor and practiced waltzes. Isadora pressed herself against the cold stone and tried to remember how to breathe. Surviving wasn't living. She'd known that for years. But lately she'd begun to wonder if there was any difference worth noting. She wasn't nothing. She'd survived 18 years in this house. Survived her father's cold indifference, Celestine's calculated cruelty, the whispers of servants who pitied her almost as much as they feared being associated with her. She'd survived. But what came after survival? What did you do when you'd spent so long learning to disappear that you'd forgotten how to be anything else? The warmth hit her chest without warning, strange and sudden, spreading outward like honey across cold bread. Isadora's hand flew to her sternum, confused. She'd eaten little today, nerves stealing appetite. But this didn't feel like hunger. It felt like anticipation, like standing at a cliff's edge in darkness, feeling wind rise to meet her. Like the moment before lightning strikes when air turns to static and silver. Like something was coming. Isadora looked up. Across the ballroom, through the crush of bodies and the haze of candlelight, a man was watching her. No, not watching, seeing her. There was a difference, she realized, and it stole breath from her lungs. He stood apart from the jewel-toned nobility, dressed in black so dark it seemed to drink the light around him. Tall, impossibly so. Broad-shouldered in a way that spoke of power earned, not inherited. His hair was dark, swept back from a face of hard angles and deliberate lines. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw shadowed with stubble. A mouth set in a line that might have been stern, if not for the slight curve at one corner. But his eyes. Even from this distance, she could see they were pale. Ice blue or silver or something in between. And they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run and never stop. She didn't run. Couldn't move at all. The warmth in her chest pulled tight like a thread drawn taut between them. Something inside her reached for something inside him, straining toward connection with a desperation that frightened her. The man moved. The crowd parted for him, like water around stone. No one jostled him. No one blocked his path. Isadora watched nobles bow their heads as he passed, saw ladies curtsy without daring to meet his eyes. A murmur rippled through the room, carrying his presence like wind carries smoke. Whoever he was, he commanded respect that bordered on fear. He didn't look at any of them. His attention never wavered from her. From the girl in the borrowed gray dress pressed against a pillar, forgotten by everyone except him. 10 feet away. 5. Close enough now that she could see the silver threading through his irises like veins in marble. The faint scar tracing his left temple. The way his chest rose and fell with carefully controlled breaths as if he fought for composure as desperately as she did. Close enough to feel heat radiating from his body, cutting through the ballroom's chill like a blade. He stopped before her. The music continued, something bright and elegant. But Isadora could no longer hear it over the thunder of her pulse in her ears. You. His voice was low, rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. It did something to her spine, made her want to lean into it like warmth from a fire. What is your name? Isadora's mouth had gone dry. She should curtsy, lower her eyes, defer. Every instinct drilled into her since childhood screamed that this man was dangerous, as powerful someone to be feared and obeyed. Instead, she lifted her chin. Does it matter? His eyebrows rose slightly. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement, or something more complicated that looked almost like hunger. It matters to me. Then you're the first person in this room who cares. The words escaped before she could stop them. Bitter. Honest. The kind of honesty that had earned her slaps from her father, weeks of denied meals. The stranger didn't flinch. He tilted his head, studying her. You're the Ashford daughter, he said. Not a question. The one they keep hidden. I'm not hidden, I'm overlooked. There's a difference. There is. He took a step closer. Isadora's back pressed against the pillar, trapped between stone and heat, between her past and something unknown. I watched you stand by this pillar for 20 minutes. Not a single person spoke to you. Not one asked you to dance. Your own sister publicly humiliated you while nobles watched and laughed. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath skin. And yet you didn't cry, didn't flee. You stood here like you owned this kingdom, as if their cruelty couldn't touch you. Isadora swallowed. Her throat felt raw. You were watching me. I couldn't stop. The admission hung between them, heavy with meaning she didn't understand. Around them, whispers rose, eyes turned, attention crushing her. He seemed to notice. His face hardened into something protective. Come with me. I don't even know your name. Theron. He offered his hand, palm up. She could see calluses there, marks earned by a man who worked with weapons, not words. And I'm asking, not commanding. Isadora looked at his outstretched hand, at the strength in those long fingers, at the vulnerability beneath his stern exterior, the way his hand trembled almost imperceptibly, as if this mattered to him, as if she mattered. She took his hand. The moment their skin touched, the thread in her chest snapped tight. Golden light flickered at the edge of her vision. Theron gone in a heartbeat. Isadora gasped. Theron's grip tightened, steadying her, anchoring her to earth when she felt like she might float away. I know, he murmured, pitched for her ears alone. I feel it too. He led her through the crowd, through doors she hadn't noticed, into a moonlit garden, where roses climbed ancient walls and music faded to a distant murmur. Isadora followed, her hands still clasped in his warmth, spreading through her like wildfire claiming dry grass. They stopped beside a fountain. Water sang over weathered stone. The air smelled of night-blooming jasmine and something else, something wild and green. Moonlight turned everything to silver. You feel it, Theron said. Not a question, a certainty. Isadora nodded. She couldn't deny it. Not with his hand in hers, not with every nerve singing a frequency she'd never known existed. I've waited for this. His voice cracked barely on the last word. For you, for years, every ball, every gathering, every treaty negotiation that dragged me to another noble house. I was looking, always looking. You don't know me. I know you've been hurt. I can see it in how you hold yourself, like you're always waiting for the next blow. Like kindness is a trick you've learned not to trust. He released her hand, but only to cup her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. I know you're strong, stronger than anyone in that ballroom realizes, and I know that the bond between us is real. Isadora's vision blurred. She blinked rapidly, fighting against hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was a door left open in winter, letting in cold that killed. Why me? I'm nobody. I have nothing. I can't give you alliances or lands or heirs anyone would accept. You're here. You're real. He said it simply, like it was the only truth that mattered. Everyone else in that ballroom is performing, peacocking, playing roles they think will impress me. You're just surviving. And I thought, that's someone who knows what it costs to exist. That's someone I could build something real with. I don't even know who you are. His hands fell away from her face. The loss of his warmth felt like a wound. The crest on my ring, and he said quietly, look at it. She looked, really looked this time. A wolf's head crowned with thorns, silver on black. The symbol that flew from banners across the northern realm. The symbol of the Alpha King. The realization hit like a physical blow. She stumbled back, hand flying to her mouth, heart hammering so hard she could taste copper. Theron Whitmore, she breathed. Alpha King of the Northern Realm. Yes, his voice was flat, waiting. Does that change things? Isadora's mind raced. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in existence, ruler of territories that stretched from the Frost Mountains to the Ember Sea. Stories were told in whispers about him. His ruthlessness in battle, his iron grip on his kingdom, the trail of broken enemies he'd left in his wake. He had united warring factions through sheer force of will. He'd faced down rebellions. He was legend, and she had spoken to him like he was just another arrogant lord. "I insulted you," she said. "I was rude. I didn't show proper respect." "You were honest." His voice softened. "Do you know how rare that is? Everyone in that ballroom wants something from me. Power, money, protection, territory. They see a crown before they see a man. You didn't even know who I was, and you still spoke to me like I was a person, not a title. I thought you were some arrogant noble." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I am arrogant. I'm also your mate." The word hung between them. Mate, fated, bound by something older than kingdoms and stronger than fear. "This is insane," Isadora whispered. "I'm nobody. My own family treats me like a servant. I don't have a dowry. I don't have connections. I have nothing to offer a king." "You have yourself." Theron closed the distance between them again, the slower this time, giving her room to flee. She didn't. "That's what I want. Not your connections, not your dowry. You. The court will never accept me. The court will accept whoever I tell them to accept." His voice hardened, taking on an edge that reminded her this was not just a man, but a king who commanded armies. "I saw your sister's performance. I've been watching your family all evening, Isadora. I came to this ball because my advisors demanded I make an appearance. I found something far more precious than political alliances." He took her hands in his, both of them this time, cradled between his palms like something fragile and valuable and worth protecting. "I won't force you. The bond doesn't work like that. You have a choice. You'll always have a choice with me, but I'm asking you to consider it." He paused. The garden was silent except for the fountain and the distant music. "Consider a life where you're seen. Consider me." Isadora stared at their joined hands. His were so much larger than hers. Roughened by sword work, scarred by battles she couldn't imagine. Yet they held her with such care, like she was made of glass and gold. "I don't know how to be loved," she said. The admission felt like tearing out her own heart. "I've spent my whole life surviving. I don't know if I can be anything more than that." "Then we'll learn together." Theron lifted her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that burned hotter than any fire. "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for a chance." Before she could respond, voices drifted from the ballroom. Raised voices. Angry ones. "That's my father," Isadora said. Dread pooled in her stomach like cold water. Theron's face hardened. The tenderness vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. His eyes became chips of ice. "Then let's go remind him who his daughter belongs to now." They returned to the ballroom together, hand in hand. The whispers that had been soft before erupted into a roar of speculation. Isadora saw her father at the center of the room, face purpling with rage. Her stepmother beside him, clutching a handkerchief as though propriety could shield them. And Celestine standing slightly behind, crimson gown, suddenly garish, her smile frozen in disbelief. "There she is!" Lord Edmund's voice boomed across the dance floor. "Isadora, come here immediately. You've embarrassed this family enough for one evening." Isadora felt herself shrink, old instincts surfacing like bodies in a flood. But Theron's hand tightened on hers. His thumb stroked across her palm in silent reassurance. "Lord Ashford." Theron's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. Conversation died. The orchestra stumbled to silence. "A word, if you please." Color drained from her father's face. "Your Majesty, I didn't realize that, as I wasn't informed." "No, you weren't." Theron moved forward, drawing Isadora with him. "You were too busy parading your titled daughter before me like a prize mare to notice that your king was watching something far more interesting." Celestine made a small, strangled sound. Theron continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I've spent the last hour in this ballroom. I've seen your hospitality on full display, Lord Ashford. I watched your heir mock her own sister in public. I watched your guests treat Lady Isadora as if she were a ghost. I watched you and your wife ignore her entirely, as though she were a stain you hoped no one would notice." Edmund sputtered. We didn't, Your Majesty." "Isadora is mine." The word fell like a hammer on stone. "I don't know what she did to earn your contempt, and frankly, I don't care. But I need you to understand something." He released Isadora's hand only to wrap an arm around her waist, pulling her against his side, a gesture that declared ownership and protection in equal measure. "This woman is my fated mate, my bond, my future queen. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects the crown, and I do not take insults to my crown lightly. Silence. Absolute. A pin dropping would have sounded like thunder. Isadora watched her family's faces cycle through shock, disbelief, and finally sickening obsequiousness. Lady Rosalind recovered first, sweeping forward with a brilliant smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your Majesty, what wonderful news. We always knew Isadora was destined for great things. We've been preparing her for this moment all her life. Edmund nodded vigorously. Yes, yes, of course, our beloved daughter. Always such a treasure. Enough! Theron's voice was ice and iron. Lady Isadora and I will be departing. You'll receive formal communication from my court regarding her transition to the palace. He turned, guiding Isadora toward the doors, but Celestine stepped into their path, her mask of composure cracking to reveal something desperate and ugly beneath. This isn't possible, she hissed. She's nothing. She's unmarked. Unremarkable. She is real, Theron said calmly, and you are in my way. Celestine didn't move. Her hands shook, her carefully styled hair beginning to come loose. Do you know what she is? What our family has hidden for years? A bitter laugh escaped. Her mother was human. She's halfling. That's why she doesn't shift. That's why she's never belonged. Celestine, Lady Rosalind's voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. But the damage was done. Isadora felt the words like physical blows, each one landing on wounds she'd tried desperately to forget. Her real mother, the woman her father never spoke of. The reason she was different. Other. Wrong. She pulled away from Theron, wrapping her arms around herself. Isadora. His voice was gentle now, stripped of royal authority. She forced herself to meet his eyes. It's true, I'm not fully wolf. My birth mother was human. She died when I was 3. My father remarried almost immediately. She gestured at Lady Rosalind, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. I'm a halfling. That's why I've never shifted. That's why the bond never found me before. That's why She stopped. The bond. But she had felt it, was still feeling it. The golden thread between them thrumming with warmth and life. Theron stared at her for a long moment. Then he started to laugh. The sound was unexpected, warm and rich, filling the silent ballroom. That's it. He shook his head, his eyes bright. Isadora, I don't care if you're half human, half fae, or half mountain troll. The bond doesn't care about bloodlines. It doesn't care what you can or cannot shift into. It cares about souls. He crossed to her in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands with a tenderness that broke something inside her. I felt you the moment you walked into this room. My wolf has been howling for you since you took your first breath inside these walls. Human blood or not, you're mine, and I'm yours, if you'll have me. Isadora searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that this was some elaborate cruelty, a twist of fate designed to break her more completely than anything before. She found only truth, only promise, only a future she'd never dared to imagine. Yes, she whispered, I'll have you. Theron kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't chaste. It was acclaiming, fierce and hot and full of promise. Isadora gasped against his mouth. He swallowed the sound, one hand sliding into her hair, while the other pressed against the small of her back, drawing her closer until there was no space between them at all. The golden thread between them blazed. She could feel it solidifying, weaving their souls together in a pattern that could never be undone. His heartbeat thundered against her chest, matching hers rhythm for rhythm. When they finally broke apart, Isadora was trembling. So was he. The carriage, Theron murmured against her lips. Now, before I do something extremely inappropriate for a ballroom. She laughed. The sound was wet with tears she hadn't noticed falling. He kissed those away too. He kept an arm around her as they walked past her stunned family, past the gaping guests, past Celestine's tear-streaked face. At the doorway, Isadora paused. She turned back to look at the house that had been her prison for 23 years. Grace stood in the servants' entrance, one hand pressed to her heart, tears streaming down her weathered face, smiling. Isadora mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Grace nodded, pressed her palm flat against her chest, then against her lips, then extended her hand toward Isadora. An old gesture, a servant's blessing, a mother's love given by someone who had no obligation to love, but chose to anyway. Isadora stepped into the night, into the carriage bearing the wolf and thorns crest, into Theron's arms, into a life where she might finally learn what it meant to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough. The carriage rolled forward, through the gates of Ashford Manor, away from 23 years of shadows, towards something that felt dangerously close to hope. Theron held her hand the entire way, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm, his silver eyes reflecting moonlight and promise. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly. Isadora thought about it. Fear was familiar. Fear was the baseline she'd operated from her entire life. But sitting here hand in his, watching the manor disappear behind them, she felt something else entirely. "No," she said, and meant it. "For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid at all." The palace rose from the earth like a promise made in stone, towers reaching toward stars, walls that had witnessed centuries of kings and queens of power claimed and claimed again. Moonlight painted everything silver and shadow. Isadora pressed her face to the carriage window, watching this fortress of a home grow larger with every breath. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Theron sat across from her, close enough to touch but giving her space, learning her already this man who was supposed to be hers. "It's stone and history. You'll make it home." The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it terrified. Because what if he was wrong? What if she walked through those gates and discovered she was still the same broken girl, just wearing a different prison? The carriage rolled to a stop. Servants materialized from shadows, efficient and silent. They opened the door with practiced precision. Theron stepped out first, then offered his hand. That hand, rough with calluses, steady with certainty. Isadora took it because refusing felt impossible. The entry hall swallowed them whole. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings that made her feel small. Tapestries depicting battles she didn't know, victories that meant nothing to her. Everything was too large, too grand, too permanent. "Your Majesty." A woman appeared at the top of the grand staircase. Older 60-something with silver hair pulled back in an elegant twist. She wore deep blue, the color of midnight. Her posture spoke of decades spent ruling, of power earned through survival. "You're back early." "We have a guest, Mother." Theron's hand tightened on Isadora's just slightly, a small anchor. "This is Isadora Ashford, my mate." The word hung in the vast space. Mate, future queen, the woman on the stairs. Queen Mother Marguerite descended with measured steps. Her eyes, the same silver as her son's, cataloged everything. The borrowed gray dress, the lack of jewelry except for a worn locket, the way Isadora stood like she was ready to run at the first sign of danger. "Ashford." Marguerite reached the bottom step. "Edmund's daughter." "The forgotten one," Isadora said quietly. Better to name it herself than let others weaponize the truth. The halfling, the embarrassment. Marguerite's expression shifted, not pity, something harder, more knowing. "I was a widow at 35. They called me the cursed queen because my husband died young and left me with a child to raise alone. The court whispered I'd brought bad luck to the throne." She paused. "Names only have the power we give them." "Mother has agreed to help you adjust," Theron said. "If you're willing." Willing, as if Isadora had a choice, as if she could survive this place without guidance. "I would be grateful." Marguerite's lips curved just slightly. "Gratitude is premature. You haven't met me yet." She turned to Theron. "The Eastern guest suite has been prepared, unless you intended other arrangements." Heat crept up Isadora's neck. Other arrangements. The implications were clear. "The guest suite is perfect," Theron said smoothly. "Isadora has requested time. A week to know me before we discuss the future." Marguerite's eyebrows rose. "A week." "A week," Isadora confirmed. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "I've spent 23 years being told what to do, where to go, who to be. I won't enter a marriage, even a fated one, without choosing it myself." Silence, the kind that stretched and tested. Then Marguerite laughed. The sound was unexpected, genuine. "Oh, I like you already. Come, child, let's get you settled before my son hovers himself into exhaustion." Theron opened his mouth to protest. Marguerite silenced him with a look that mothers everywhere had perfected. "Theron, go handle whatever urgent matters have piled up in your absence. I'll take care of your mate." Your mate. The words settled into Isadora's bones. Permanent, terrifying, real. The Eastern guest suite was larger than Isadora's entire room at Ashford Manor. Bedroom, sitting room, bathing chamber with a copper tub big enough to drown in, windows overlooking gardens where night flowers released their perfume into darkness. Marguerite moved through the space with familiarity, lighting candles, adjusting curtains. "Servants will bring hot water shortly. There are nightgowns in the wardrobe. Tomorrow we'll arrange for a proper wardrobe, but tonight comfort matters more than appearances." Isadora stood in the center of the room, afraid to touch anything. Afraid that touching would reveal this was a dream and she'd wake up on cold kitchen floors with a scrub brush in her hands. "Sit." Marguerite gestured to a chair upholstered in soft blue fabric. Before you collapse. Isadora sat, her legs folded beneath her, grateful for permission to stop holding herself together. Marguerite settled across from her movements, deliberate despite her age. My son believes in fate, Marguerite said. He believes the bond chose you because you're meant to be together. He's not wrong, but he's also a romantic who thinks love conquers all. She paused. I'm more practical. So let me ask you directly, why do you deserve him? The question was a blade, clean, sharp, designed to cut through pretense and reach truth. Isadora met Marguerite's eyes. I don't know if I do. I don't know anything except that when I'm near him, I feel less broken. When he looks at me, I exist in ways I never have before. But deserving, she shook her head. I've been told my entire life I deserve nothing. I'm still learning to believe otherwise. Marguerite was quiet for a long moment. 20 years ago, when my husband died, the court wanted me to step aside. Let Theron's uncle rule as regent until he came of age. They said a widowed queen couldn't hold a kingdom together. That I was too emotional, too weak, too female. You didn't step aside. No, I fought. I clawed. I proved every day that my grief didn't make me incompetent. That loving someone deeply and losing them didn't disqualify me from power. Marguerite leaned forward. You know what I learned? What? That strength isn't the absence of pain. It's surviving the pain and choosing to keep living anyway. My son recognizes that in you. The question is, do you? Isadora's throat tightened. I'm trying. Good. Marguerite stood. That's all any of us can do. Try, fail, try again. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Theron can be intense. He loves with his whole heart, which means he can overwhelm. If you need space, take it. If you need time, demand it. Don't let his certainty erase your doubts. Doubt is healthy. Doubt keeps us honest. Thank you, Isadora whispered. Marguerite smiled. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow the real work begins. Morning arrived in shades of gold and rose sunlight, filtering through gauze curtains. Isadora woke in a bed softer than clouds tangled in sheets that smelled of lavender and luxury. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory returned. The ball, Theron, the palace, a life that didn't feel like hers. A knock at the door, soft but insistent. Come in, Isadora called, sitting up. A young woman entered carrying a tray. Breakfast, my lady. Queen Mother Marguerite requests your presence in the South Garden at your convenience. My lady. The title felt foreign. Isadora wanted to correct her, to explain she was nobody, just a girl who'd gotten lucky. But the servant was already setting the tray on a small table, arranging things with practiced efficiency. Thank you, Isadora managed. The servant curtsied and left. Isadora stared at the tray. Fresh bread, butter, jam, fruit cut into perfect pieces. Tea steaming in a porcelain cup painted with flowers. More food than she'd seen at one meal in years. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, trying not to remember all the times she'd eaten, standing up in kitchens, stealing food when no one was looking. Always hungry, always aware, she was taking space she didn't deserve. The South Garden was a maze of hedges and flower beds, pathways winding through cultivated beauty. Marguerite sat on a stone bench beneath a willow tree, book in her lap. She looked up as Isadora approached. Good, you found me. Marguerite closed the book. Sit. Isadora sat. The bench was warm from sun, comfortable in ways furniture at Ashford Manor had never been. Today begins your education, Marguerite said. Not in how to be queen, that comes later. Today, I teach you how to exist without apologizing for it. I don't know how to do that. I know, that's why we start simple. Marguerite gestured to the garden path. Walk from here to that fountain. Don't rush, don't hide. Just walk like you have every right to occupy space. It sounded easy. It felt impossible. Isadora started walking. She felt her shoulders curl inward, her steps quicken, her body trying to minimize itself. Old habits, survival instincts. Stop. Marguerite's voice was firm. Come back. Try again. Isadora returned, tried again. Marguerite corrected her posture, her pace, the way she held her head. They repeated this exercise for an hour. Walking. Just walking. Something Isadora had done her entire life, now being taught like it was a foreign language. Why does this matter? Isadora asked, finally frustrated. Because how you move through the world tells people how to treat you. If you shrink, they'll overlook you. If you apologize with your body, they'll believe you should. Marguerite touched Isadora's shoulder gently. You've spent 23 years making yourself small. We're teaching you to take up space. It's going to feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is growth. Something in Isadora's chest loosened, just slightly. My whole life I've been told I'm too much and not enough at the same time. Yes, that's the trap they set for girls like us. Too loud, too quiet, too bold, too meek, too something, always too something. Marguerite smiled sad and knowing. The truth, you're exactly right. You always have been. The world just didn't know how to see it yet. Days blurred into each other. Routines formed. Isadora woke, ate, spent mornings with Marguerite learning things she'd never been taught. Etiquette, diplomacy, how to read people, how to navigate conversations where every word carried weight. Afternoons belonged to Theron. He kept his promise about giving her space, but he was present, persistently, patiently present. They walked through palace gardens, ate lunch together, talked about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood, about becoming king at 19 when he should have had more time to be young. She told him about grace, about learning to read in stolen moments, about the books that had saved her when nothing else could. "What's your favorite?" Theron asked one afternoon. They sat in his private library surrounded by more books than Isadora had ever seen. Favorite book? Favorite anything? Color, season, memory. Isadora thought. Gray, she said finally. The color gray. It's what I was wearing when you found me. It's the color of Grace's dress. It's quiet, understated. But it's there. It exists without demanding attention. Theron was quiet for a moment. Gray, he repeated. The color of dawn before the sun rises. The color of strength that doesn't need to shout. What about you? Blue, the specific blue of the sky just after a storm. When everything feels clean and new. When you remember that storms pass. Something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. Two people who'd survived different storms learning to trust the calm. On the fifth night, Isadora couldn't sleep. She wandered the palace hall's nightgown trailing, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's home. She found herself in front of the library. Light spilled from beneath the door. She knocked softly. Come in. Theron's voice. He sat at a desk covered in papers, documents requiring his attention, his approval, his decision. He looked tired. Human. Not a king, just a man overwhelmed by responsibility. I didn't mean to disturb you, Isadora said. You're not. He set down his pen. Can't sleep. Too quiet. At Ashford Manor there were always sounds, pipes groaning, servants moving, my sister's music. Here everything is so silent. Come here. Theron gestured to the chair beside him. Keep me company while I work. You don't have to talk. Just be here. Isadora sat. Theron returned to his papers. She watched his hands move the way his brow furrowed at particularly difficult documents, how he occasionally paused to rub his temples. The intimacy of watching someone work, of existing beside them without performance, settled something inside her. Theron, ufayam. Why me, really? Not the romantic answer, the true one. He set down his pen, turned to face her fully. Because when I saw you standing beside that pillar, you were the only real thing in that entire ballroom. Everyone else was performing, peacocking, playing roles they thought would impress me. You were just there, surviving. And I thought that's someone who knows what it costs to exist. That's someone who won't take anything for granted. And that's someone I could build something real with. That's not very romantic. No, but it's true. He reached for her hand. The bond brought us together, but I'm choosing you, Isadora, every day. The bond is fate. What we build from it, that's choice. She squeezed his hand. Let herself believe just for a moment that choosing could be this simple. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Isadora and Theron fell into rhythm. Morning walks, afternoon conversations, evening meals where they learned each other's histories, preferences, fears. Marguerite continued her lessons. Grace arrived on the 10th day, not fired, but choosing to leave Ashford Manor to join Isadora at the palace. I resigned, Grace said simply when Isadora asked. My place is with you. It always has been. On a rainy afternoon in the 3rd week, a servant interrupted Isadora's lesson with Marguerite. Your Majesty, Lady Celestine Ashford requests audience with Lady Isadora. Isadora's blood went cold. Celestine, Poashinu. Here, the memory of her sister's cruelty at the ball, the way she'd weaponized Isadora's heritage, the lifetime of calculated wounds, all of it crashed back. Marguerite touched her arm. You don't have to see her. I know, Isadora stood, but I want to. I need to understand why she came. They received Celestine in a small parlor. She looked different outside Ashford Manor. Smaller somehow. Her crimson dress had been replaced with something simpler, dove gray. Deliberate, Isadora realized. Her sister was wearing gray. "Thank you for seeing me." Celestine's voice was quiet, not the sharp performative tone from the ball, something more authentic underneath. "Why are you here?" Isadora asked. No preamble, no pretense. Celestine sat without being invited, her hands twisted in her lap. "Because I haven't slept since that night. Because every time I close my eyes, I see your face when I revealed your mother. The way you looked at me, like I'd killed something. You tried to humiliate me in front of the entire court." "I did." Celestine met Isadora's eyes. "I've spent 20 years humiliating you, hurting you, making you feel like you deserve to be overlooked. Why?" The question hung between them. Marguerite remained silent, watchful. Celestine's breath shuddered. "Because Mother Lady Rosalind, she was nothing before she married Father. A servant's daughter who got lucky, who got beautiful, who married up. Her entire life has been performing, proving she belongs. And she raised me the same way. Told me I had to be perfect, that any flaw, any weakness would destroy us." "I was the flaw," Isadora said quietly. "You were the reminder that we weren't really nobility, that our blood wasn't pure, that if Father could have a halfling daughter, what did that make us?" Celestine's voice cracked. "I hated you because you were free. You didn't perform. You didn't pretend. Even when we hurt you, you stayed yourself, and I—" She stopped, swallowed. "I've been performing my entire life. I don't even know who I am without the mask." Silence. Rain against windows. Marguerite stood quietly. "I'll give you privacy." After she left, Isadora and Celestine sat in the small parlor. Sisters who'd never been sisters. Enemies bound by blood. "I don't forgive you," Isadora said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking—" Celestine looked down at her hands. "I'm asking if there's any chance we could start over. Not forget. I know we can't forget, but maybe we could try to be something other than this. Something other than victim and villain." Isadora thought about Marguerite's words, about choosing, about the difference between fate and free will. "I don't know," she said honestly. "You've hurt me for so long, I don't know how to trust you. Then let me prove it. Let me show up. Let me be the sister I should have been." Celestine stood. "I'm not asking for friendship. Just a chance. One chance to be better." Isadora walked her sister to the door. At the threshold, Celestine paused. "You look different here. Happier. Like you finally found somewhere you belong." "I'm learning," Isadora said. "Learning to believe I deserve to belong." After Celestine left, Isadora found Theron in the training yard working through sword forms with a practice dummy. Sweat dampened his shirt. Muscles moved under fabric. He stopped when he saw her. "Your sister." She apologized. Sort of. Isadora sat on a bench. "I don't know if I believe her." Theron sheathed his practice sword, sat beside her close enough she could feel heat radiating from his body. "You don't have to decide today. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel generous. Some days the anger will come back. Both are okay." "How are you so patient?" "I'm not patient. I'm terrified." He looked at her directly. His jaw worked, vulnerability flickering across his face. "Terrified you'll wake up and realize you can do better than a king who works too much and carries too many scars." "Theron, let me finish." He took her hand. "I've had women throw themselves at me my entire adult life. Daughters of lords, foreign princesses, all wanting the crown, the power, the status. You're the first person who sees me and still looks uncertain, like you're not convinced, and it's the most honest thing anyone's ever given me." Isadora squeezed his hand. "I'm certain about one thing." "What?" "That you're worth the risk, that whatever happens, knowing you will have been worth it." He kissed her then. Different from the ballroom kiss, gentler, seeking instead of claiming. Isadora leaned into it, let herself feel without overthinking, let herself want without shame. When they broke apart, both breathing harder, Theron rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to ask you something soon. Not today, but soon. And I need you to know you can say no. That no is an acceptable answer." "What are you going to ask for the rest of your life?" Simple, direct, terrifying, but only if you want to give it. Week 4 arrived with cherry blossoms and possibility. One morning, Theron found Isadora in the library, Grace reading nearby. He carried something small wrapped in velvet. "Walk with me," he said. They walked to the highest tower, climbing stairs that spiraled upward. At the top, the moo world spread out below. City lights, stars above, wind carrying the scent of cherry blossoms and hope. When I was 19, Theron said, and my father died, I stood here and wondered if I could do it. If I could be the king he'd wanted me to be. If I could hold this kingdom together. Could you? Some days yes, some days no, but I learned that asking for help wasn't weakness, that loving people didn't make me soft. He turned to her. Isadora Ashford, I know you asked for a week, it's been 4, but I can't wait any longer to ask you something. He unwrapped the velvet. Inside was a ring. Simple silver band with a single stone, blue-gray like dawn. This was my grandmother's. My father gave it to my mother. She gave it to me before she stepped down from active rule. He held it up. I'm asking you to marry me, to be my queen. Not because the bond demands it, because I choose it, because I choose you. Isadora looked at the ring, at Theron, at the city spread below full of people she'd be responsible for if she said yes. I'm afraid, she whispered. I know. I'm afraid I'll fail, that I'll be the queen who doesn't belong. That court will never accept me. They'll accept you because I do. But more than that, he stepped closer. You'll accept yourself. That's what these weeks have been about. Learning that you're worthy not because a king chose you, but because you exist. Because you survive. Because you have a strength that most people will never understand. What if I can't be what they need? Then we'll figure it out together. But Isadora, he took her hand, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be you. The woman who spoke honestly to a stranger in a ballroom, who survived 23 years of cruelty and came out kind, who walks gardens with my mother and makes her laugh, who brought grace into this palace because loyalty matters more than status. That's who I recognize when I look at you. Not a halfling, not a mistake, not a forgotten daughter. A woman who's going to change everything. Isadora looked at the ring again, thought about Marguerite's lessons, about walking like she had a right to space, about Celestine's tentative apology, about Grace choosing to stay. She thought about the girl who'd scrubbed floors and believed she was nothing, about the woman she was becoming, slowly painfully learning to believe otherwise. Yes, she said, yes, I'll marry you. Theron slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He kissed her there on the tower under stars and possibility. The city spread below them, unaware that their forgotten daughter had just become its future queen. When they descended the tower hand in hand, Marguerite was waiting. She took one look at Isadora's hand and smiled. 3 months, she said. We'll plan the wedding for 3 months from now. That gives you time to find your footing, to be certain. I'm certain now, Isadora said. Good. Be certain again tomorrow and the day after. Certainty that lasts is built daily, not decided once. Marguerite embraced her. Welcome to the family, daughter. That night, Isadora stood at her window watching the palace gardens bathe in moonlight. The ring on her finger caught light, throwing small rainbows against the wall. In 3 months, she'd be a queen. In 3 months, everything would change. But tonight, she was simply Isadora, a girl who'd survived, who'd been recognized, who'd chosen to believe finally that she deserved to be loved. From down the hall, she heard Grace's soft snoring. From somewhere deeper in the palace, Theron's footsteps. From the gardens, nightbirds singing songs of spring and renewal. Isadora touched the locket at her throat, her mother's locket, the woman who died bringing her into this world. I'm going to be okay, she whispered. I'm going to be better than okay. I'm going to be happy. The wind carried her words away into darkness, into a future that for the first time in 23 years felt like it might actually belong to her. She slept that night without nightmares, dreamed of cherry blossoms and silver rings, of walking through palace halls with her head high, of being recognized, chosen, and finally whole. Spring turned to summer in gradual increments. Cherry blossoms gave way to roses. Morning dew burned off earlier each day. The palace settled into rhythms that included Isadora now not as a guest, but as something permanent, something that belonged. 8 weeks since the proposal. 2 months of learning to wear the ring without feeling like an imposter. Isadora stood in what would soon be the lower city literacy center, breathing in sawdust and fresh paint. Workers hammered and measured, transforming an abandoned warehouse into something that mattered. Tables where children could learn, shelves waiting to be filled with books, windows letting in light that had been blocked for decades. The first session opens next week. Marguerite stood beside her, surveying the progress with the critical eye of someone who'd spent 40 years ensuring things were done right. Are you ready? No. Isadora touched a table, ran her fingers along smooth wood. But I'm doing it anyway. Grace appeared in the doorway, arms full of primers and readers donated by merchants eager to curry favor with the future queen. Where do you want these, dear? Near the window. Children should read in good light. Isadora moved to help, but Grace waved her off. You have a queen in training to be. I have arms that still work. Let me be useful. Useful, Isadora understood that need, the need to matter, to contribute, to be something other than decorative or pitied. Theron arrived as afternoon shadows lengthened. He'd been in council meetings all day hammering out trade agreements with southern territories. He looked tired, creases around his eyes that hadn't been there 2 months ago. Being king aged you in ways that showed, in ways that didn't. It's perfect, he said, taking in the space. You're going to change lives here. We're going to treat. Isadora gestured to the tables. 30 children the first day. That's the goal. 30 kids who might not otherwise have access to education. Why literacy? Theron asked. You could have chosen any cause, any charity. Isadora thought about scrub brushes and marble floors, about Grace teaching her to read in stolen moments, about books being the only escape from a life that felt like slow suffocation. Because reading saved me. When nothing else could reach me, stories did. Words gave me worlds where I mattered, where girls like me became heroines, where being different wasn't a curse. She turned to face him. If I can give that to even one child, if I can show one kid that they're worth teaching, worth investing in, then maybe all of this will have meant something. Isadora. Theron crossed to her, took her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. It already means something. You already mean something. Just by surviving. Just by being kind when kindness wasn't shown to you. Just by being exactly who you are. She kissed him. There in the warehouse that smelled of paint and hope, surrounded by tables waiting for children and books waiting to be read. Grace cleared her throat pointedly from the corner. Marguerite made a noise that might have been amusement. When they broke apart, Theron pressed his forehead to hers. 1 month until the wedding. 1 month. The words felt impossible, real and impossible all at once. Nervous, terrified. Isadora stepped back, needing space to breathe. What if I'm terrible at being queen? What if the court never accepts me? What if... Isadora. Marguerite's voice cut through the spiral. Every queen who has ever ruled has asked those questions, including me. The difference between a good queen and a failed one isn't certainty. It's showing up anyway. The letter arrived 3 days later. Thick parchment, the Ashford seal pressed into burgundy wax. Isadora stared at it for long minutes before breaking the seal. Isadora, I write to request an audience. There are matters we must discuss before your wedding, matters that concern your mother and circumstances of your birth. If these details become public without proper context, they will cause scandal that could damage your position. I come not as a threat, but as your father offering protection from truths that should remain private. Lord Edmund Ashford. Protection, the word tasted like poison. Isadora read it twice more, her chest tightening. This was manipulation, control dressed up as care. Edmund had overlooked her for 23 years. Now suddenly he was concerned about protecting her. She found Theron in the training yard working through sword forms. Sweat plastered his shirt to his back. He moved with brutal efficiency, each strike precise, controlled violence against invisible enemies. My father wants to meet. She held out the letter. He's threatening to expose something about my mother if I don't. Theron read quickly. His jaw tightened. He's bluffing. Maybe, maybe not. Isadora wrapped her arms around herself. What if there's something worse? What if my mother was, I don't know, a criminal or something that would make the court refuse to accept me? Then we deal with it together. Theron sheathed his practice sword. But Isadora, listen to me. Your father is a coward who spent your entire life making you feel small, so he didn't have to face his own failures. Whatever truth he thinks he holds, it doesn't change who you are. Marguerite appeared from the palace, moving with purpose. I heard. We're going to investigate before you give Edmund the satisfaction of a response. Investigate how? I have resources, people who owe me favors, information brokers who've been operating since before you were born. Marguerite's smile was sharp. Edmund Ashford isn't the only one with secrets to leverage. It took 2 days. 2 days of Marguerite pulling strings, calling in debts, speaking to people Isadora never saw. When she finally called them to her private study, her face was grim. Sit, Marguerite said. Both of you. Isadora sat, Theron beside her, close enough to touch. An anchor. Your mother's name was Lydia. Marguerite's voice was gentle. Lydia Hayes. She was a maid at Ashford Manor, 19 years old, beautiful from what I'm told. Sweet, illiterate, but clever. Isadora felt the words land like stones. Go on. Edmund seduced her, got her pregnant. When she told him, he panicked, offered money to go away quietly. Lydia refused. She wanted you, wanted to keep you even if it meant poverty and shame. What happened? Marguerite pulled out a document. Yellowed paper official stamps. Edmund arranged for Lydia to be sent to a workhouse 3 territories away. Told everyone she'd been dismissed for theft. She gave birth there alone with no one who cared if she survived. Pause. She died 3 hours after you were born, hemorrhaging. They did nothing to save her. She was nobody important. Isadora's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. And me. Edmund couldn't let you die in a workhouse. Guilt, maybe, or fear that someday the truth would surface and destroy him. He claimed you as his told people. You were born to a secret first wife who died. Lady Rosalind married him a year later, already knowing the truth, knowing you were the reminder of his cruelty. Why didn't she love me? Isadora's voice broke. If she knew I was blameless in all this. Because loving you meant facing what Edmund had done, meant acknowledging that she'd married a man capable of letting a young woman die alone. Easier to blame you, to treat you like the evidence of his sin instead of a child who deserved care. Isadora stood, paced to the window. The city spread below, people moving through lives that didn't include her pain. My mother wanted me. She chose me even when it cost her everything. Yes, Marguerite stood beside her. Lydia Hayes died for you because she loved you that much. And Edmund let her die. Let me believe I was unwanted, a mistake, something shameful. Isadora turned. He's not threatening to expose a scandal. He's threatening to expose his own guilt, his own cowardice. Theron stood. We go to Ashford Manor. We confront him, and we take away his power to threaten you ever again. Ashford Manor looked smaller in daylight, less impressive, more like what it was, a house built on exploitation, maintained through cruelty, decorated with lies. Isadora stood at the entrance, Theron beside her, Marguerite behind them, 3 against whatever waited inside. Edmund received them in his study, the same study where he'd summoned her before the ball, where he'd told her to attend without caring what it cost. He looked older now, grayer, smaller somehow. Your Majesty. He bowed to Theron, nodded to Marguerite. His eyes skipped over Isadora like she was furniture. Old habits. We received your letter, Isadora said. Her voice came out steady, strong. The one where you threatened to expose scandalous truths about my mother. Edmund's face paled. I was trying to protect yourself. Isadora stepped closer. You wanted to control the narrative before someone else could, before I could investigate and discover what you did to Lydia Hayes. Hearing the name spoken aloud in this house, in this room, was power. Edmund flinched like she'd struck him. Lydia was a maid, Isadora continued, 19 years old. You seduced her, got her pregnant, then sent her away to die alone in a workhouse rather than face responsibility. Each word was a stone building a wall between them. My mother wanted me. She chose me. She died because you were too much of a coward to claim your own daughter. You don't understand, Edmund's voice shook. I was young, stupid. I panicked. You were 28, hardly young, and you had 23 years to tell me the truth, to apologize, to acknowledge that you let my mother die and then punished me for existing. Isadora felt Theron's presence behind her, solid and certain. Instead, you let me believe I was nothing, that I deserved to be overlooked, that my very existence was a burden. Edmund sat heavily in his chair. He looked old suddenly, ancient. I see her face in yours. Every day. Her eyes, her smile before. He stopped. It's easier to hate you than hate myself. That's not my burden to carry. Isadora pulled out a chair, sat across from him, eye level, equal. I'm going to be queen in 1 month. My literacy program opens next week. I'm going to help children who come from nothing, who are told they don't matter, who think being overlooked is safety. I'm going to give them what you never gave me, belief that they deserve better. And you're going to live with what you did. You're going to wake up every day knowing you killed a 19-year-old girl because you were too selfish to do the right thing. That's your punishment, not prison, not public shame, just truth, living with truth. Edmund's hand shook. What do you want from me? Nothing. I wanted a father who loved me. I spent 23 years wanting that, but I don't want it anymore. I don't need it anymore. She stood. You're not invited to my wedding. When you're ready to seek help, when you're ready to genuinely apologize and mean it, maybe I'll consider letting you back into my life. But until then, you're just the man who couldn't love me. And I'm the woman who learned to love herself anyway. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. One more thing. You will arrange for a memorial for Lydia Hayes, a proper one, with her real name, in the Ashford Cemetery. You'll acknowledge her publicly as my mother. You'll give her the dignity you denied her in death. People will ask questions. Let them ask. Let them know you're capable of admitting mistakes. It might be the first honest thing you've done in 30 years. In the hallway, Isadora's knees nearly buckled. Theron caught her, held her steady. Breathe, he murmured. You did it. It's done. Lady Isadora. They turned. Lady Rosalind stood at the top of the stairs. She looked smaller than Isadora remembered. Older. Her hands twisted together, nervous energy seeking outlet. I heard. Rosalind descended slowly. Everything. I was listening outside the door. Then you know I'm not interested in excuses. I'm not offering excuses. Rosalind stopped 3 steps above them. Still higher. Still unable to meet Isadora at eye level even now. I failed you. Worse than failed, I enabled your suffering because I was too afraid to lose my security. I came from nothing, and I've spent my entire marriage terrified of returning to nothing. That's not my responsibility. No, it's not. Rosalind descended the final steps, stood on the same level finally. But watching you become queen, watching you create programs to help children, watching you survive everything we did to you and still choose kindness. Her voice cracked. It taught me something. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. What do you want, Rosalind? To help with your literacy program, not as Lady Ashford, just as Rosalind. Someone who was once an illiterate girl from a poor family. Someone who understands what those children face. She looked up, finally met Isadora's eyes. I can't undo 23 years, but maybe I can spend however many years I have left trying to be better. Trying to be someone who deserves your forgiveness, even if I never receive it. Isadora studied her stepmother, saw genuine regret there, genuine shame, but also something else. Hope, the desperate hope that it wasn't too late to change. Grace coordinates volunteers, Isadora said finally. You'll report to her. You'll do whatever she asks. You'll be treated like any other volunteer, no special status because you're Lady Ashford. And if you hurt anyone, if you make anyone feel small, the way you made me feel small, you're done, understood? Rosalind nodded. Tears streaked down her carefully powdered face. Understood. Then you can start next week. After Rosalind left, Marguerite squeezed Isadora's shoulder. That took strength, more than confronting Edmund. Forgiveness is always harder than anger. I'm not forgiving her. Not yet. Isadora looked back at the manor, at the house that had been her prison. But I'm giving her a chance to earn it. That's all any of us can ask for. Chances. Opportunities to be better than we were. The wedding came 3 weeks later, late summer when gardens exploded in color and heat hung thick in air that smelled of roses and possibility. Isadora stood in a preparation room, Grace fussing with her dress. Simple ivory silk. No crystals, no excessive embroidery. Just clean lines and fabric that moved like water. Her mother's locket at her throat. The ring Theron had given her on her finger. You look beautiful, Grace said, her eyes shining. Happy tears this time. Your mother would be so proud. Both of them. Isadora touched the locket. Thought of Lydia Hayes dying in a workhouse, choosing her daughter's life over her own. Thought of Grace teaching her to read in stolen moments, loving her when no one else would. I had 2 mothers, one who gave me life, one who taught me how to live. A knock. Celestine entered wearing soft blue. She stopped when she saw Isadora. Oh, she breathed. You're radiant. 3 months of weekly visits had softened things between them. Not healed, that would take years, but softened. Celestine had proven consistent, showing up, being present, doing the work of rebuilding without demanding immediate forgiveness. Ready, Celestine asked, as I'll ever be. They walked together to the palace chapel, small, intimate, only people who mattered. Marguerite stood at the front, prepared to officiate. She wore deep purple, regal, and certain. Theron waited at the altar, dressed in formal black with silver accents. His eyes found Isadora immediately, held her. Grace walked her down the aisle. Not her father, not tradition, but the woman who'd earned the right, who'd loved her when love was dangerous, who'd given her a dress and a chance and a reason to believe she mattered. Halfway down the aisle, Isadora saw them. In the very back row, barely visible, Lady Rosalind and Lord Edmund. Not invited, but not turned away either. She'd left word with guards if they came, let them stand in the back. Let them witness what their cruelty hadn't destroyed. Let them see her happy. Edmund's face was wet. Rosalind held his hand, both of them staring at the daughter they'd failed, watching her claim everything they tried to deny her. Isadora felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a quiet peace. They were part of her story, but they didn't define it anymore. Their cruelty had shaped her, yes. But Grace's love had saved her. Marguerite's wisdom had strengthened her. Theron's choice had shown her what she deserved. And her own stubbornness, her own refusal to let their rejection kill her spirit that had carried her here. To this altar, to this moment, to this life she'd built from nothing. Grace placed Isadora's hand in Theron. Stepped up, smiled through tears. Marguerite cleared her throat. We gather today to witness a bond that fate began, but choice completes. Isadora Ashford and Theron Whitmore come before us not as king and subject, but as equals, as partners, as two souls who found each other and decided to be brave. She looked at them both. Love isn't finding someone perfect. It's finding someone real. Someone willing to see your scars and stay anyway. Someone willing to do the work of choosing every day to build something that lasts. Theron, your vows. Theron took Isadora's other hand, held both of hers and both of his. Isadora, I promise to recognize you, not just today but every day. When you're strong and when you're scared, when you're certain and when you doubt. I promise to give you space when you need it and presence when you ask. I promise to build a kingdom with you where children never feel overlooked again, where being different is celebrated, not condemned, where love is louder than cruelty. This is my vow. This is my choice. Today and always. Isadora, your vows. Isadora's throat tightened. She'd written vows, rewritten them a dozen times. Now standing here, all the practiced words fled. She spoke from somewhere deeper. Theron, you recognized me when I felt overlooked. You chose me when I was unchosen. You gave me time when I needed to learn that I deserved to be loved. I promise to honor that gift. I promise to keep choosing you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to build something with you that's worth the wait, worth the fear, worth everything. You taught me I was more than my pain. Let me spend the rest of my life teaching you the same. Marguerite smiled. By the power vested in me as Queen Mother and officiant of this ceremony, I declare you married, bound by bond and strengthened by choice. You may kiss your queen, your majesty. Theron kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper. The chapel erupted in applause. Grace sobbed openly. Celestine wiped her eyes. Marguerite looked satisfied the way mothers do when children they've raised make good choices. In the back, Edmund and Rosalind stood silent, watching, witnessing, living with what they had lost. 6 months passed like breath. Fall turned to early winter, the literacy center expanded. First one location, then 3, then 5. Hundreds of children learning to read, to believe they mattered, to see possibilities beyond the circumstances of their birth. Isadora woke most mornings to Theron already dressed, handling urgent matters before breakfast. Being king meant constant demands, endless responsibility. But he always came back to their chambers for lunch. Always made time for walks in gardens that had lost their blooms but gained a stark beauty. Grace had settled into palace life like she'd always belonged. She coordinated volunteers, managed supplies, and mothered Isadora in 1,000 small ways, reminding her to eat, to rest, to remember she couldn't save everyone, but she could show up and try. Celestine visited weekly, sometimes more. She'd discovered painting, found she had talent for capturing emotion in color and form. Her first gallery show raised significant funds for the literacy program. Sisters still learning to be sisters, but learning. Lady Rosalind volunteered 3 days a week, quiet, diligent, never asking for recognition or forgiveness, just showing up, working with children who reminded her of the girl she'd once been, illiterate, scared, hoping for someone to believe she was worth teaching. Edmund had arranged Lydia's memorial, a beautiful stone in Ashford Cemetery. Fresh flowers appeared weekly, placed by hands Isadora suspected were his. He'd begun therapy, sent occasional letters not demanding response, just updating her. Small steps toward accountability, toward being better. Isadora kept the letters, didn't respond, but she kept them. One afternoon in late autumn, Isadora stood in what would become the Lydia Hayes Memorial Library. Theron had brought her here, led her through palace gardens to a section she'd never explored, tucked behind high hedges. A new structure stood there. Small building, elegant arches, walls of glass. "What is this?" she'd asked. "A library." Theron had opened the door. Inside, shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, already filling with books. Comfortable chairs, tables, light pouring through glass walls. For you, for the children, for anyone who needs stories and safe spaces. He'd led her to the far wall. A plaque hung there, bronze, engraved. The Lydia Hayes Memorial Library, founded by Queen Isadora Whitmore. In honor of mothers who sacrifice everything for children who deserve the world, Isadora had cried then. Let herself feel the weight of everything, grief and joy tangled together, impossible to separate. Theron had held her steady and certain. "Your mother gave you life," he'd said softly. "This gives her life meaning, forever." Now, weeks later, the library was ready. Opening day. Children filed in, bundled in warm clothes donated by wealthy nobles eager to support the Queen's programs. Isadora sat on the floor surrounded by them and read a story. Something about a girl who felt overlooked, who discovered she had power, all along the power of perseverance, of kindness, of refusing to let the world's cruelty make her cruel in return. "Were you always a queen?" A small boy, Marcus, 7 years old, new to the program, asked when the story ended. Isadora smiled, set down the book. "No, I was overlooked for a long time. I was told I was nothing. I believed it for years. What changed? Someone recognized me. Someone looked past what everyone else saw and found something worth knowing. And slowly I learned to recognize myself. That's when everything changed. Not when someone chose me, when I chose me." Theron sat in the doorway, watching, listening, learning to love her more deeply every day. Marguerite stood beside him, Grace next to her. Two women who'd mothered Isadora in different ways, who'd shown her that family was built, not born, that love was action, not words. In the back corner, Lady Rosalind helped younger children with basic letters. Patient, kind, becoming someone worth forgiving one day at a time. Celestine's paintings hung on the walls, bright splashes of color in winter's grayscale, donated to make the space beautiful, to show children that art mattered, that beauty could be created from pain. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, children laughed and learned and believed they mattered. Isadora touched her stomach. 3 months along now, barely showing, but real. Life growing inside her. A child who'd be raised in love and certainty in a world where being different was celebrated. "Your Majesty," Grace appeared beside her, Theron close behind. "There's something you should see." They led her to the entrance. Outside, standing in the snow, were Edmund and Rosalind. Not coming in, just standing, watching through the glass walls. Edmund's face was weathered, older. He held flowers, winter roses, Lydia's favorite according to records Marguerite had found. He placed them at the base of the memorial plaque, stepped back, bowed his head. Rosalind said something to him. He nodded. They turned to leave. "Wait," Isadora found herself saying. She walked to the door, opened it, snow swirled in. "Would you like to come inside?" Edmund looked up. His eyes were wet. "We're not worthy." "No, you're not." Isadora's voice was calm, clear. "But you're trying, and that counts for something." She stepped aside, held the door open. Edmund and Rosalind entered slowly, uncertain, like they were stepping into a space they didn't deserve. Isadora led them to where children clustered around books, to where Celestine painted with a group of older kids, to where Grace coordinated the chaos with quiet efficiency. "This is what love looks like," Isadora said quietly. "Not perfection, not absence of mistakes, just showing up, doing the work, being better than you were yesterday." Edmund's voice broke. "I'm sorry, for everything, for your mother, for you, for all the years I—" He stopped, swallowed. "I'm sorry." "I know." Isadora touched his arm briefly. "That's a start." She returned to the children, to Marcus asking questions about the story, to the work that mattered, to the life she'd built from nothing. Theron joined her on the floor. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. Through their bond, she felt his pride, his love, his certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. As the afternoon light faded to dusk, as children were bundled up and sent home with books tucked under their arms, as volunteers cleaned up and prepared for tomorrow, Isadora stood at the window, watching snow fall on a kingdom that had gained a queen who understood what it cost to survive. She opened her mother's locket. Inside, Lydia's lock of hair, and now a small photograph. Grace and Marguerite, Celestine, Theron, her chosen family, the people who'd loved her into wholeness. Across the bottom, she'd written words in her own hand. You are enough. You always were. Outside, snow fell on children walking home with stories. Inside, warmth and light and the promise of tomorrow. Isadora placed her hand on her stomach, felt the flutter of life within. Our child will know they're loved, she whispered to Theron, from the first breath. Always. He kissed her temple. Because you know what it means to survive without it, and you're making sure no child ever has to. Isadora looked around the library, at the plaque bearing her mother's name, at the shelves full of possibilities, at Grace laughing with Marguerite, at Celestine teaching a child to mix colors, at Rosalind carefully shelving returned books, at Edmund standing awkwardly in the corner trying to find a way to be useful, at Theron beside her solid and certain in choosing her every single day. She'd been the forgotten daughter, and she'd refused to stay forgotten. She'd refused to stay small. She'd refused to let their cruelty define her story. She'd written her own ending, and it was beautiful.